Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, I want to quickly talk about the structure of the MVC projects in the ASP.NET Core technology. So let's dig in. First, we talked about how to create the first MVC project, and we have something like this, including the controllers, models, and views folders, and also some other matters and the items. But before continuing this project, it's a really great idea to take a look at the overview of the MVC projects. To do that, if I take a look inside this structure, we call it the MVC structure. So we have the user, suppose this is me, hello Musavi, what's up? And my user wants to open up the google.com. This is a really simple website, the google.com. To do that, we need to open up, for instance, the Google Chrome or all the browsers and type the google.com and press enter. And then I have the results over here. But in the back behind, to show something like this simple website, we need to execute the different steps and use the different technologies. And one of the most common technologies is the MVC. So after writing the google.com and pressing the enter over here in the address bar, indeed this structure is executing. So we call it the HTTP request, HTTP, then the google.com, and press enter. Then this is the HTTP request, and the request is sent to the web server of the website. Then inside the website, we have the routing system. The routing system will guide the request to the appropriate controller. And we call it a kind of navigator or the leader or something like that. Then based on the selected web page, the routing will use the appropriate controller. What is the controller? The controller is the main part of the MVC. So it is the C over here, the MVC. C stands for the controller. So the controller is the connector between the data inside the database and the result web page. So the controller based on the selected page will use the appropriate model. And the model is responsible for loading the data from the database and save it back inside that. So the controller uses the model to load the data from the database, then generates the view. What is the view? View is indeed the response or the result page. And the Google and the result is something like this. Indeed, my view is this web page. And this web page generated by the controller and the data inside the database using the model. Then we call it the response. You know what? I'm not telling you that the Google is using the MVC. I just want to show you the simple example for better understanding. Indeed, after clicking on the google.com and pressing the enter, the index.html page will be executed. But for simplicity of the process, this part is ignored by the web server or the browser. So the index.html is the page inside the google.com. We call it the view, and this part. Now let's talk about another example. Suppose my user wants to get inside the Microsoft.com. After pressing the enter over here, we have something like this, the ENUS. This is the English version of this website. And we call it a kind of the controller. We call this part a kind of the controller. So after pressing the enter, the request will be sent to the routing system. So this is the HTTP request, Microsoft.com. Then I have the routing that will use the appropriate controller based on the selected or requested page. Currently, I want to work with the English version of the Microsoft. So the appropriate controller will be selected. Then the controller will load the data by the model and executing the code inside the model and retrieve the data. Then create the view. View is a kind of the HTML page or something like that. That is the appearance or the interface of the website. So the controller will generate the view based on the selected page and the model. Then send it to me, to my browser, and it is the response. And I can see the result something like this. So the result in the Microsoft.com is this web page, including the images, the data. These data are loaded by the controller using the model. So all of this data are loaded by the model from the database by the controller. Then create the view, and the view is something like this web page or the result page. So this was the second simple example for better learning of the MVC structure. You know what, at the first look, this structure is a little bit scary, but no worries. The philosophy behind this structure is really simple. At the first step, we need to open up the browser and write the address of the website and press enter. Then the request will send to the routing system inside the website. The routing system will use a proprietary controller based on the selected page, and the controller will load the data by the model from the database and generate the view or the result page. Then send the result page to the user browser and call it the response. This is the request and this is the response. We're gonna request the google.com and the server send us the response, and the response is the google.com web page. And remember, sometimes we haven't any database or we haven't any model for loading the data. We have the simple static and unchanged view or the web page that we want to send to the user. In these situations, we can easily ignore and skip the model and the database. So it's not necessary always to use and have the model. We can easily skip some part of this structure, for instance the model, and also sometimes we can easily skip the view and generate the simple text to show to the user. So it's possible to ignore the model and also the view. We can do it, but it's not common between the programmers. Okay, excellent, well done. Now we learned more about the structure of the MVC projects using the ASP.NET Core technology. So what about the next step? And the next step is time to start using the MVC with the real world project and start working with these folders step by step. It's time consuming, so let's talk about it in the upcoming tutorial. Thanks for your time.